So let me tell you about our guest that's coming on right now. It's Colonel Berney Flowers. He's a retired Air Force colonel. He's a former congressional candidate. I hope he is going to run for office again. I got an opportunity to go through some of his videos before he came on, and he's another one of those spirit animals. So we're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about what's happening in Washington, D.C. specifically, and then we're going to examine kind of what I think the ethos is, or the reason behind what is happening in DC, and the part that we don't talk about, that crime's not a problem in DC. We're gonna focus in on Ward 7 and 8, which I'm sure he's familiar with. But he ran for Congress in Maryland's 3rd District in 2024. He was endorsed by the Veterans for America First, Veterans for Trump, and Legacy PAC. He served 21 years in the U.S. Air Force. He was assigned to the U.S. Air Force Air Staff during the 9/11 Pentagon attack and deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and visits to 22 countries and 43 states. He returned to the DoD as a civil servant, contributed to the U.S. Cybercom's initial staff, and later as a senior technical advisor for NORAD and U.S. Northcom at Fort Meade. Fort Meade's just outside of D.C., by the way. Know that place very well. He supported refugee resettlements for Afghans, Haitians, and undocumented migrants at the southwest border, and professional roles. He worked as a project manager in the banking industry post-military. He was appointed to Maryland's 9th District Judicial Nominating Commission. We're going to talk about that too. Judges. Whew. Don't want to know what I have to think about that. He's an author, a podcaster. And now that I found him and he's coming on the show, I definitely will make him a weekly listen. So with that said, Colonel Flowers, welcome to the show.
Joe, thank you for having me. We should have
Absolutely.
linked up a long time ago because we got a lot of mutual friends.
Yeah, we do. And, man. So you sent me a video this morning and I watched it. I shared it. And you talked about what's happening in Washington, D.C. And I'm from D.C. Do you live in D.C. now? Do you live in Maryland,
No,
Virginia?
no, I'm up in Howard County. You know the area, but for the audience, maybe about an hour north between DC and Baltimore, close to Fort Meade. I'm about 15 minutes away from Fort Meade. And, we came here from Texas after my military career with the intent of, spending another career, working, supporting the United States like I had done before, only as a civilian. But, circumstances and COVID got in the way. So I'm one of those unvaccinated types. So here we are.
My tribe member right there. Let's go.
Like I say, I found my tribe.
So you've been all over the world,
I've traveled a little bit.
and you are you born in where are you born? Where are you?
North Carolina,
Okay, all
right?
right.
Matter of fact, I was born about 30 miles outside of Fort Bragg, and I grew up idolizing the United States military, specifically the Army. But unfortunately, my brother got into the Army first, and I realized the Army wasn't big enough for both of us, so I went into the Air Force.
Is it still a rivalry? I just got to know if it's still a rivalry.
Oh, yeah, but they can't go anywhere without us. We got to haul them around. That's why they call our C-130s trash haulers. Paratroopers got to jump out of something.
Oh, it's so funny. Uh, so your video, I was going to play the video.
Please do if you wish. Whatever you want to do, man.
It's
your show.
Let's start there if we can. And let me see here. Let me see if I can share it with you guys. Hold on a second here. Guys, I feel like I'm behind. No, it's. Let me see if I can get it real quick. I'm sorry. I
Take
should have
your
been better.
time.
I should have been better prepared.
Well, I
But
got to admit, I came on a little bit early, and you're one of those guys. You saw me up here, say, "Hey, let's get started." But the bottom line is, I came in early. I got a bad habit of being an early guy, like most military people are.
man, I love it actually. It works out really well for me. Um, Here, I'll get it. I'll find it. That got it. See, I shouldn't have this many email boxes, but I do.
You're a popular guy.
um, I'll find it. Give me 1 second, guys, and I'll find it here in a second. But yeah, oh yeah, I can just find it on my page. What is wrong with me? So my brain is just not working. Here we go. Hold that thought. Everybody's gonna be like, Joe, I even saved it. Copy link. All right, there you go. Got it. Pull that video. All right. So I want to talk about bringing the National Guard in. You're in the military. You have the radical left, and again, a certain portion of the what I call the rhinos or the establishment that are also kind of ringing the bell, saying we shouldn't be doing this. Um, Anacostia, are you familiar with it?
Oh, very much so. DHS headquarters is there, as you very well know.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it is 95% of the murders and violent crimes happen in a 2.3 square mile area.
that's
So
right.
you can go check my math. So you have people that are on the other side, we call the Ivory Coast of DC, that say, "Hey, there's no crime here. I can walk home." Right? Right?
Yeah, they never make it over to Anacostia.
No,
It's like a third world over there, as you know.
could you walk if you're a white dude now? I could walk around. I think I'd be comfortable walking around there because I grew up in a very poor environment in the DC area. So I think I'd be fine. Actually, I'm not sure I would. I think I'd have to fight my way out of it. But m- the average leftist liberal, you think they'd last 1 minute in Anacostia?
No, they would be targeted the moment they walked in. I mean, people drive through there. Sometimes they're rerouted to on their way home, but they don't stop.
No,
So,
not even
and
at the
and and
stoplight.
no, don't even stop. And then the worst part is if it gets dark, that is a no-go area even for somebody who looks like me. You just don't want to be if you're not from there, if it's dark, you don't want to be outside. There's a lot of things going on that, and I used to drive through there all the time. On my way back home, sometimes I get routed through there. I don't like going there. I've been in and out of that place, for the past 30 years for various reasons when I was at the Pentagon and when I was stationed at Fort Meade down in DC all the time, so I know it pretty well, just like you do. And to answer your question, Anacostia is a no-go area, and it's a shame that we have places like that in the United States. Baltimore is actually worse,
Worse,
as you are. Yeah,
way
as I
worse.
remember, DC before Trump took over, specifically, you had 27.3 murders per 100,000 people in 2024.
Mhm.
And Baltimore, if I remember the stat correctly, was 33 people murdered per 100,000 in 2024. So the liberals don't want to put those statistics out. And I'm pretty sure, you've heard that there's been some cooking of the books within the DC Police Department and the police union and the upper leadership of the DC Police Department are at odds about those books. And you could say the same thing in Baltimore and most of the liberal run cities in the United States. There is a reckoning happening right now, and I am so happy to see it.
Well, when we start talking about Baltimore specifically, uh, again, there's an Ivory Coast of Baltimore, and then there's this 3.4. I did it before we came on the show. 3.4 miles, square mile area where there's not a school, there's not a grocery store, there's two convenience stores that, and the per thousand, if you take the amount of crimes that happen in those areas, and you statistically look at what happened in Baltimore, in that area, by using the same per 100,000, it's 391
Yeah,
per
it's
100,000.
bad. It's bad.
Okay.
you know the homeless problem in liberal cities, it's almost like they're trying to chase out normal Americans because nobody can afford or wants to live in a situation like that. And I live literally between DC and Baltimore. We live in these nice suburbs, and the weirdest thing is Howard County, Maryland is one of those bedroom communities around DC that's literally one of the wealthiest areas in the entire United States. I mean, I don't live in one of those wealthy places, but per capita in the county, being that we have so many people who work for the federal government, things are going well here. But you go 20 minutes north or 40 minutes south, and you're in a third world country in Anacostia, in parts of Baltimore. And it's a shame in this richest country in the entire world. We got to fix this.
Yeah. So, and we talk about drugs, and we can go back to the 80s and 90s when people were going into Congress. So I just have to tell you, I grew up in an interracial family. And I'm going to make I'm going to recognize some things that I think that conservatives just miss. When you treat people like animals, you go to Anacostia, these children come up and they have the equivalent of PTSD of a soldier being on the battlefield, right? By the age of 8, it's strike before being stricken. You see these little kids that basically will come at you, and they'll, the reason is because they got their ass beat by their parents, grandparents, the kid down the street. There was no consequences. There was nobody to stop that abuse from happening to these kids, right?
Correct.
So as they get older, it perpetuates the problem, and we treat them like animals. And the police come out, and they're like, they're animals. Well, what did you expect? You got a food desert, you got an education desert, you have an opportunity desert. You're telling them that, hey, kill all your babies, and by the way, here's some drugs, here's some guns. We've made this problem, Colonel. We've made this problem. And they're the ones that get left behind. And now the lefts are out there saying, because they don't want to fix that problem.
No, they don't. No, they do not. Poor people, there's an old saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And if you remember a few years ago in Baltimore, there was a big deal about lead pipes and the idea that the water system in Baltimore was pretty bad because this water that people were drinking was causing people to lose cognitive abilities. So when you live in a poor community like that, you have nobody to advocate for you, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's unfortunate, if I may tell this story. Um, I got invited to sit in at the Congressional Black Caucus of all things. Now, I am a conservative. I am a staunch conservative, and I knew what I was walking into. But I got a chance to have a few words, and the table I was sitting at was filled by Black professors from an unnamed state HBCU, Black university. And they spent the whole time, the 2 hours we were there, bragging about how much money they were making from the federal government because they were getting a grant from the Biden administration to go teach English in Korea. And it made me angry. And the reason I was angry is because I told them when I got my opportunity to speak for just a few seconds, why are you people not concerned about Anacostia? Why are you people not concerned about Baltimore, where we're spending $23,000 per student and getting kids who can't do basic math or basic English and are basically unemployable? So you should have seen the looks I got. I won't be invited back.
But that's my point. The truth is a knife that cuts through butter, right?
You're correct.
It should be real easy to get to the problem of let's work the problem. And in the military, that's really the mantra is let's work the problem. Let's work the problem. Let's work the problem. We can identify the problem. We have the funds to support it and to stop the problem from perpetuating itself. And yet we throw money at people that just want to make the problem much worse. And we've seen it happen. We have ineffective leadership, but more importantly, we have unethical, trashy leadership.
Joe, if I may, I don't want to cut you off, man, but I think I've found a kindred spirit here, and I got to take advantage of the vine while I got it. So there was an article that came out in the Baltimore paper today. There's 20 or so individuals working in the mayor's administration, to include the mayor himself. They make more money than the governor. Baltimore, one of the worst run cities in the entire United States, is overcome by a payroll that, most of these people making well over $200,000 a year. The director of the superintendent of the school system there makes $450,000 a year at last check. But yet we've got the worst outcomes, arguably, in the entire United States of any school system. We got to stop this.
19.4% of the population of those children that graduate able to read at an eighth grade level?
Unsat, unsat. We got to do better. I mean, how are these people going to expect to contribute to a society? I don't get it. And more importantly, folks just keep voting Democrat. And I don't want to just beat on the Democrats. There are some good Democrats,
I got a lot of
but
friends that are Democrats that are good people. I
yeah,
do. I
yeah.
mean, I've had, I have some really good conversations with Democrats that believe the same thing I do. But you said something interesting. You said I'm a conservative. I'm a staunch conservative. I would argue that most good Democrats are conservatives too.
Back in the old days, there was such a thing as a blue dog Democrat.
Yep.
I probably got 10, 15 years on you, but do you remember Senator Sam Nunn? You remember that name?
Hmm. Yeah.
Staunch conservative from Georgia, but he
Yeah.
was also he was conservative, but he was a Democrat.
Right.
And we don't have those people anymore. The Democrats have leaned so far to the left, they appear to be crazy. We've got Jasmine Crockett, we've got AOC, we've got Bernie Sanders. That's the representative of the Democrat Party, and the issue
That's the
today is
smartest. That's the smartest we got. I mean, come on. This
that's the
isn't a
best they
real.
got. Who's going to run for president? You know, oh, what's this, Ma'am Dami out of New York? Come on now. So, like I said, this system works best when there's checks and balances. And right now, um, Mr. Trump has them on the run, and I'm happy to see that. But there needs to be some sort of resistance, and otherwise, we're going to go too far to the right. But the issue today is the Democratic Party. The Democrat Party is this in a bad way. I'm happy that they are because their ideas are terrible. And as you remember, let's see, of the past 12 years, three of the presidential terms have all been run by Democrats, and Trump's trying to make things better, and he's doing a wonderful job. But the Democrats have been in control for a long time, and there's a reckoning coming, and I can't wait to see it. It's happening right now.
Colonel, I have a problem. I have a massive problem. Here's my massive problem. One, election systems are rigged largely across the entire
Yep.
United States. And in places like Chicago, they would just buy you lunch, right? He'd give you $50, hand me your ballot, and we'll just right. It's a real thing. So
Corruption's
they did it.
everywhere.
They did it in D.C. Matter of fact,
Hmm.
way back in the day, uh, I was just a youngster, and I got on the campaign for Mayor Marion Barry. Right? I love that
Hmm.
guy. I mean, you could say a lot of things about him. He was a crack addict, but you know what? He
Yeah,
was
he was
a
effective. He fought for his people.
he did say what you want. He fought, right?
Yep.
And he was full of corruption. And at the
Oh
end
yeah.
of the day, his type of corruption was, "Hey, I have to get something for the community,
Yeah.
right? I have to get something for the community." So, I mean, years later, I mean, if I were doing it today, I would not be on his campaign. I just want to be clear.
No.
But when I was a kid, he was the ant he was the he was the anti-hero. Like
Hmm.
he was someone you could look up to because he came from nothing and created something,
Yeah.
right? And when you're in Baltimore or some of these cities, you don't know what it looks like to have something. Like
No.
you wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah. And the sad thing is Baltimore is not all bad. There are portions of Baltimore that are wonderful, but
Oh,
you
dear
don't
Lord.
hear about those places. Yeah, you don't hear about those places. So it's kind of crazy, and I'm just so glad that President Trump is seeing. And by the way, I sure wish you'd call me Bernie. I was
I'll call
a
you Bernie, but I want to give you the
I,
respect of the service that you've given this country, and frankly, I
having me
yeah.
on your program is respect enough because the bottom line is as I said before, we got mutual friends, and the bottom line is I'm just happy to be here, and I want people to be comfortable with me because the truth is that there's not enough conservatives to go around, and I'm just happy that you've invited me here and given me a chance to be the loudmouth old military guy that I am.
Well, the loudmouth old military man that you are, that hopefully is going to run for office, and when we get rid of the machines and mail-in ballots, that will solidify your place in history. Because I think that we'll get rid of the stupid people once that happens.
You know, there are people working all over the country towards that end. And, I can tell you, I don't want to get too specific because somebody might come knocking on my door, but you know where I used to work. And I'm just telling you that these Dominion voting machines and, there's just too much power in the system. I mean, I was talking to a lady just yesterday, and we were talking about the idea in Maryland that if you want to buy a gun, you've got to use your ID. But if you want to vote, you don't use your ID. They encourage you to not identify yourself. That makes no damn sense. None whatsoever. And I know that there's an initiative in the Trump administration to force voter ID across the entire United States. And I just think that is the smartest thing, because you shouldn't be able to vote unless you're a citizen of this country, and a tax paying. It's a privilege to vote, and we need to take it seriously. And those who don't want folks to show ID when they vote, they're just opening up the opportunity to cheat, and that's all they want to do.
That's why they want it. That's why that's the whole concept behind it.
That's
I
right.
want to I want to play this cut if I can, because this, and then after this cut, we're gonna get your thoughts on what you said. It's the cut that you had that you sent me this morning. So I want to play that, and then after that, yeah, I'll get your thoughts, and then I'll play a cut on Trump announcing Liberation Day in D.C. And how this could become a catalyst for across the country. Let's first play the cut from this morning.
Governor, it's a different war now. There's more brothers dying here in these cities than overseas. So isn't it fair to have them there? And it's Democrats that agree with this measure. Don't take my word for it. The local cop there, the police chief, agrees with this. The mayor of the city agrees with this. And it's because people that look like me and you are dying.
No one needs to explain to me the pain that is taking place in so many communities. No one needs to explain to me the pain that is taking place in so many communities, urban, rural, and suburban, who are being besieged by this issue of gun violence, who's being besieged by this issue of chronically and generationally not feeling safe inside of your neighborhoods. And it's the reason that we have made it our top priority to make sure that people are feeling safe. But I can tell you right now, what people want more than anything in those communities is they don't want performative, they want performance, right? They're not looking for someone to walk around with military fatigues and a big gun. They're looking for someone who actually understands how to make people feel safe and how to make people actually safe in their communities. Our National Guards are not trained for this. I'm very specific about my role as Commander-in-Chief of the Maryland National Guard, and we know the missions that they are trained for, and municipal policing is not one of them.
So I'll tell you
so
this.
We want to be serious about making people safe. Let's actually do the things that make people safe.
Wes Moore, Maryland's governor for almost 3 years now, is catching heat, folks. Critics are saying, Wes, you're the captain of Maryland's ship. Baltimore, our biggest city, is sinking fast. The statistics say crime is getting better, but you don't feel it in the streets. And now Wes is picking a fight with President Trump, who's sent the National Guard in to clean up D.C.'s streets. Wes, why block the guy who's trying to fix this mess? I think you're just playing politics. On Fox News recently, Moore is out here saying that the National Guard isn't trained for city policing. Really? Tell that to the Guard units that have been deployed for riots and hurricanes and all sorts of civil issues. They've handled community safety before. Don't act like they're just good for handing out sandbags during floods. Trump's plan? Send 200 or so Guard troops at a time to D.C. for administrative work, logistics, and what they call command presence. That means standing at street corners looking like they mean business. He's even put the DEA chief in charge of D.C.'s streets for 30 days. Constitutional? You bet it is. Trump's demonstrating his duty to secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all Americans, even Black Americans who live in the city. But Wes Moore and the Democrats, they're acting like that's a threat to freedom. Give me a break, man. Wes, you aren't free if you aren't safe. Now let's talk numbers. Moore brags about a 20% drop in violent crime in Maryland. That sounds nice. In 2024, Baltimore's murder rate was approximately 35.2 per 100,000 people. Except Baltimore's crime rate is still double the national average. That's like saying, hey, I only crashed my car twice this week instead of 4 times. Meanwhile, DC's no better. The homicide rate there is 27.3 per 100,000 people. Bogota, Colombia is at 15 per 100,000 people. Ottawa, Canada, their homicide rate is 2.1 per 100,000 people. Paris translates to a homicide rate of about 1.55 per 100,000 people. London, 1.4 per 100,000 people. You get my point. DC and Baltimore's crime rates are 5 alarm fires, while Wes Moore is out here saying, well, just relax, we got this. And the stories. Heartbreaking. 3-year-old Honesty Cheadle was shot by a drive-by after a 4th of July cookout. Taya Settles, another 3-year-old, was killed the same way. A 17-year-old at Dunbar High School was shot in the head during a chaotic brawl not long ago. Eric Tarpenian Jaquim, a 21-year-old congressional intern, was gunned down this past June. These aren't statistics. They're lives. And the media barely blinks because it doesn't fit their narrative. Where is Black Lives Matter when the victims and the perps are black? Then there's the case of Reggie Brown, a 64-year-old cancer patient beaten to death by 5 girls, aged 12 to 15. They filmed it and laughed about it while they were killing this man. They'll be out of jail before they turn 21, maybe even sooner. That's locally controlled crime. That's what it looks like. Trump, his post about teens mugging and maiming and shooting, it might sound harsh, but it's the truth. It's the truth that the elites don't want you to see. Moore and DC's Mayor Muriel Bowser keep saying, we've got this, while crime is a daily nightmare for residents. 10 violent crimes, 6 robberies, 14 car thefts per day in DC alone. That's the average. Wes Moore claims Maryland's making progress with youth programs and local partnerships. But when your city is a war zone, maybe it's time to let the feds help out. Instead, he's calling Trump's move deeply dangerous on CNN. Dangerous for whom, Wes? The criminals? DC's residents? Or the Democrats? Look, I get it. Nobody wants tanks rolling down Main Street, but this isn't that. It's a short-term boost to stop the bleeding. If Moore and the Dems had been serious about crime in Baltimore and D.C. for the last decade, we wouldn't be having this discussion. The people in those neighborhoods deserve to live without fear, not just being told that crime's down while they're dodging bullets. So here's the deal. Trump's trying to break the cycle of lawlessness, and Wes Moore is playing defense for the status quo. Will the guard fix everything? Nah, but it is a start. It's a start towards lower crime in D.C., perhaps even Baltimore, I hope. This has been the Loyal Opposition Show. I'm Berney Flowers, saying it's time to put people over politics. Stay loyal, stay loud, and we'll be back with more truth that you won't hear on the nightly news. If you like what you heard, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and share it with your friends. I'd love to hear your opinion. If time permits, drop me a comment. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.
You know, I actually hate people. I just don't like people. hate's the wrong word. I don't like people, but I love people at the same time, right? In other words, I recognize that, you know, we haven't even started talking about PG County. I mean, they put PG County, you put a fence around
Oh
it,
yeah.
basically. You moved, part of what they did in DC by pushing people out of DC and
Yep.
encroaching into Anacostia and making, putting up high rises and doing all that stuff on the river. They moved all those people to PG, put a fence
Yes, they
around them,
did.
gave them a couple EBT cards and told them to go at it. Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
It's the truth. It's the
Yeah.
truth. Saw them do it, and people didn't realize the bamboozle that they were going through. But I'm cutting you off. You go ahead and say what's on your mind.
No, go ahead. I have you on the show. They want to hear you talk. They don't even care about me. But I mean, I just feel like when I saw that video, I was just so.
Well, first of all, I thank you for sharing it because it came from the heart. Just like what you do. I mean, we do this because it's the right thing to do. And I'm an old retiree. I could just, sit back and watch my government pension come in and play with my grandchildren. But if we don't step up, there aren't going to be any opportunities for our grandchildren. So, years ago, when we first got here from Texas, and I'm working before Cybercom started, I used to have to drive from Howard County, where I live at this very house, down to Arlington every day. So if I wasn't on the road by 4:30 in the morning, I'm late. So
You
by
were
the
getting
time,
there.
yeah. So the issue of the day is you're familiar with New York Avenue in DC.
Oh yeah,
You come off
absolutely.
95, you take New York Avenue.
Mhm.
This is before they built that big bypass, and you had to go through the city to get down to Arlington. It was the best way to do it. And I noticed, and no offense, but it was as rough as Anacostia. It was crackheads. It was terrible. But this was 15 years ago.
Mhm.
So I noticed that they started doing construction, and then after a while, they started renovating buildings. And on that crackhead trail, I used to call it. No offense, but you'd see little blonde girls jogging at 6 in the morning when I was coming.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, what has happened here? It's been gentrified. And so now that very rough area, a lot of blacks have been moved out over to PG County, like you said. And that place is now full of high rises at $3,000 a month. And it bothers me because you can't buy those high rise apartments or condos. You got to rent them. They don't want buyers. They don't want an
Yep.
ownership society anymore. What they want is perpetual renters. And folks that live there, I guess they seem happy. I don't necessarily stop on New York Avenue, but I'm just illustrating how it's changed. And the crime rate in PG County is pretty doggone bad. I mean, theoretically, it's the wealthiest black owned suburb, black run suburb in the entire United States,
Yep.
but some of the crime is some of the worst you'll ever see because they moved those same people, that same culture from DC into PG County, and those kids are running wild. And it's crazy.
So Bernie, how do we fix it? I always want to. I have great plans in my brain. I go, I volunteered to mentor incarcerated youth, and I had a couple really hard cases. I mean, I've done this over the last 20 years,
Mhm.
and one of those guys is named Dominic. He was a real hard case. He wasn't the hardest, but he was a hard case. He works for me now, and he's got
Cool.
all of his certifications on the tech side and works for one of my tech companies. Um, but you would hear stories. I would hear stories from some of these young men of what went on in their life, and I have I have my own stories, and they're not good. Right? My parents were kids having kids, and it's bad. Nowhere near as bad as theirs is, but we have an entire society inside of these places that if we set aside the crime for a minute, just set it aside as a statistic, put it aside. If you can't solve the human condition problem that we have in that area, if we can't get to a place where we solve that, we are doomed. Like, there's no way to solve this problem by policing it. You can police it to stop the crime from happening. You can start locking people up. And maybe there's a certain number of those people that are too far past the PTSD threshold that their brain, I mean, when you have that stuff going through, adrenaline go through your head all the time, it can make you crazy. And that's what you have in these areas.
Yeah.
These men were not born crazy. They weren't born as animals. They were created by the 3-year-olds that were killed on the street. And in Anacostia, I would argue that per capita of the number of people every night that are shot and killed, it's a high percentage of the people that are just out on the street. Like that decided it was a good idea to walk in Anacostia at night. It's like, I made this up, like 1 in 5. Because if you get
Yeah.
there, you have drug dealers on the streets, you have bonfires at corners, you
Yep.
have very few cars that go through other than a police car. And even the police cars don't go in singles
They
anymore,
don't stop. Unless
right?
there's a problem, they're not stopping.
Even if there is a problem, they'll call in the paddy wagon.
Yep.
They don't stop. They're like, yeah, they're going to ambush me. I'm out.
It's a completely different way of policing. And then again, you got Black Lives Matter. Remember, a couple of years ago, we were talking about defunding the police, and the
Yeah.
major police departments in the United States, a lot of them suffered from that defunding action. So they're just now rebuilding their ranks.
How do we start looking at the problem? Why is it that we can get on here? We can identify what the problem is. We know they're treated like animals. We can even admit they're animals. Right? We can admit that there are people that are on the streets in I don't care if you're white, Asian. If you grow up in that environment, you have a high probability you're going to go crazy, right?
Yeah.
Look at the pro athletes that come out of Baltimore, come out of these areas. They're
Mhm.
outstanding athletes. How many of them have been washed out of the environment because they were nuts,
Yeah. It happens
right?
all the time. Happens all the time.
So even if you have a lot of talent and you get out, you still have the trauma that you had to deal with for whatever it is, 20, 25 years. So
You are correct, sir.
how do we solve
If I
that
may,
problem? Yeah, go ahead.
this is systemic. This goes back a long way. A lot of people talk about slavery, but I like to start with Lyndon Baines Johnson, because the issue of the day is that the Democrat Party has been infiltrated by Marxists. I know it sounds crazy, but they want to literally destroy this country. And the problem with the Lyndon Johnson and his Great Society is that they basically created a system to where the father wasn't needed in the home,
Yes.
and they separated the black man and the black woman. There was a time before Johnson came along where the marriage rate among black people was higher than their Caucasian counterparts, and so now 27% of black women get married. That is not good. So while the rest of society is growing and prospering with two-parent families, you've got this epidemic of single households. Now, okay, if that's all you got, that's all you got. But what about the concept of a two-parent household where that boy, who is probably going to grow to be 6 foot tall and 220 pounds, has a male role model to emulate?
Mhm.
He needs to somebody, maybe not necessarily talk to him, somebody he can watch to learn the ways of manhood. And in a lot of black households since the 60s, our government has actually socially engineered the man away from the household. And now you've got guys running around acting like women. Now, let me give you this. Your typical man, you look like a pretty good sized guy. I'm a pretty good
220.
sized guy.
Yeah, built
Yeah.
like a yeah.
Yeah. An average guy at 150 pounds, like Floyd Mayweather size, is strong enough to kill somebody with one blow. So you have to teach that person restraint. Okay. But if you have that young man who grows up in a female led household and he doesn't understand that a man has to have stoicism and restraint, and he acts like a woman, he's going to wild out when somebody challenges him, and he might just kill someone accidentally. The next thing you know, the rest of his life is spent in prison. And once you get in the system, it's really, really hard to get out of that system. And so it stems from our government is engineering the weakness in the Black community, and they have to be changed. And that is why I support President Trump, because he's actually out there doing something about this. And the first thing you got to do is stop the crime. People need to be able to walk the street. My criteria is a little old lady should be able to go to a grocery store at midnight and not fear for her life.
You know, that's that brings me to politics over policy. And I mean, you just identified a massive issue that we have, and yet we can't even talk about the issue. You don't even get there because Black Lives Matter says, hey, defund the police. It's unfair. They just keep locking us up.
That's right.
And you talked about Lyndon B. Johnson and the fact that eugenics, if you go back even further, go back to the 40s, when Margaret Sanger said, hey, it's a really good idea. We could just kill off and genocide entire generations of black children by just making this a right. And so you have these rights that you have this thing that should be a moral dilemma in anyone's mind. You remove the father from the home. The mother then has to basically scavenge for just basic necessities, rely on the government. And then on the other side, you have people that says, well, you shouldn't have had a child out of wedlock. And then the police create profile. It looks like a tunnel that just keeps going down. There's no way to escape it.
You know, in the community, the best thing you can do to ensure a good economic life is don't have babies before you're 21.
Mm-hmm.
And don't, to get married, especially for a young woman, get married and don't have babies before you're 21. And chances are those statistics are going to propel you to a comfortable life. We're not even talking about education, because what you mentioned is the idea is that you're talking about stresses. You know, my wife and I have been married 37 years. We didn't have our first child until I was 26 years old and flying satellites across the sky for the United States Air Force. We were secure financially before we started having kids. Not only that, we were secure in our marriage before we started having kids. And I preach that to all the young men that I mentor. So, slow down, take it easy. If you love this girl and she loves you, she'll wait to the ends of the earth, but we've got to preach that. And we got a lot of guys, we've taken the man out of the household, especially in the Black community. And that's got to stop. It's got to stop.
So how do we do it? I mean, let's solve one problem at a time. You have a whole generation of young men, and I would argue from age 6, 7, 8, 9, that's where it starts. These kids are, they're learning to gangbang young. They're also learning that they're a victim young. And if it's not someone in their family that's victimizing them, they walk outside and, little girls. I mean,
it's emotional. I get it.
When I was watching your video, I had to just stop for a minute because I was a part of that statistic. I was a poor kid, one of 8. My brother was murdered by a police officer in 2017.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
And so I recognize that I made choices in my life, but there are people that reached down and picked me up and said, you have talent, you have ability, you're very smart. Here's the path that you can take, or you can go do that. But if you do that, you're going to prison.
Yeah.
Right. And I hung out with guys, all went to jail or died. Right.
That's the way it is.
And so I realized that I was one of the, I sold drugs at 16. I was one of the lucky ones, but I feel like God just said, hey, I need you to go on this path. I need you to use those talents. But now as I look back, I do have a lot of compassion for thugs, gang members. And people say, well, Joe, how can you have compassion for them? And I would tell you, because that was me. That's who I was. That's the path that I was headed down. And by the grace of God, I was able to, 1, understand God's presence in my life, but 2, that to grab onto something that I wanted. Like I wanted to grab and go somewhere different. So how do we give that to them? How do we stop this train wreck from happening and give people in these communities? And I'm all for, by the way, putting National Guard on every street corner for the next 25 years to straighten this out. I am.
Got it. Got it. You know, from my perspective, now I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, and from the very first rememberings of my life, there was four little kids that lived on this rural street, and we kind of hung out. We spent a lot of time. We discovered each other, you know, when we got to the point where we were old enough to, you know, leave our little home. You know, you drive down, you know, ride your bike 300 yards and there's another family down there. And, you know, people, our adults, families knew each other, but, you know, we hung out until I was about maybe a 10 or 12. And of those four guys, two of them ended up in jail and one's dead. And how the creator saw in me the reason to keep me alive, I don't know. I will admit I didn't necessarily do anything bad because my mother was hard. Okay. You didn't, you know, you just didn't cross her. And after she got done, you know, with whatever she was going to do, whatever corporal punishment she was going to do, then she'll tell my dad. And that was a rare occasion that you just did not want to experience. So we lived in a pretty tight household. But the main thing is, everybody that I knew on my street had a two-parent family. And even the kids with two-parent families, some of them ended up not doing so well. So, but I will go back to say that back to Lyndon Johnson and the Democrats, they bamboozled the Black community
Yeah.
and created this sense of victimhood. And we got to get past that sense of victimhood. And guys like you that have made it and done well, the story needs to be told. I'm so thankful that you have this program because you can share that with people and folks can see that, you know, yeah, you can make it. I mean, I put myself in the same category. I mean, I've done okay by the grace of God, and you know, there's a lot of reasons I shouldn't be here, but here I am. And instead of sitting on my tuffet, you know, drawing my retirement check, I'm going to get out there and fight the fight as long as I have breath in me. But the main thing is our government is working against us, and these cultural elites that went to Harvard and Yale and all these fancy places, they're the ones who are making the cultural decisions and the social decisions, and most of them don't know where Anacostia is. They don't live in PG County. They came from Harvard and they came from Brown and they came from Stanford, and they're doing theoretical things that really are not good for the Black community. And I say people like you and I need to get involved and get engaged. Let's go out there and set an example. You don't have to necessarily make speeches, but just be present. And that's one of the things that I try to do. And, you know, I'm very proud of my kids. I've got two, and then I've got two grandkids, and my wife and I have a traditional marriage, and my daughter has a traditional marriage. And traditionalism works because it works. And maybe we need to embrace that. You know,
I
that's what I try
absolutely
to
agree
preach
with
to
you.
people.
I absolutely agree with you. Do you think what's happening in DC, do you think what President Trump is doing in DC, do you think it could be a national model to kind of settle
I
down?
sure hope so. You know, here's the funny thing. You know, let's talk about Chicago. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I do pay attention because they got a communist mayor there, and he was giving huge amounts of money to individual illegal aliens who are living in Chicago. And the bottom line is, there's been a flood there recently in one of the poorer sections of the area. And what's happened is there's no money for the Chicago residents who pay taxes. It's terrible, you know? And so now what are we going to do? The issue of the day is that there's flooding, people's houses are being destroyed, but the budget coffers are gone. There's nothing there because this guy spent money on people who are not American citizens. The same ones that Secretary Holman are trying to get out of the country. So there you are. We've got to reclaim our politics, and we got to advocate for traditionalism. We got to advocate for families. We got to promote families, because if we don't, we're all going to be lost.
So if we d- do you think we're going to have to sacrifice? I mean, this is a hard thing to say. When we went overseas to Iraq and Afghanistan, there was lives that were lost that were unintended consequences or casualties of war. And it's a hard thing for us to say right now to say, okay, in order to reset this, we've got to bring grocery stores back to Baltimore. We got to bring or DC. We got to bring education standards up where the teachers are, not run by guys that are sitting in ivory towers making $500,000 a year, trying to push down on kids some of this social agenda BS. So,
Yeah.
so it's a lot. It's a lot at the same time. Do you think we're going to have to sacrifice a certain number of people that are already maybe past the PTSD crazy? They exist, right? These are in order to get to a place where we can protect the 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and create a new generation.
The word triage comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you can.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect system. And I'll mention back in my time in the military, I mean, we had to do a lot of things that I didn't necessarily agree with, but I did make a commitment to the United States and I did what I thought was right. And I'm not happy about everything I did, but I'm proud of my service. And now we need to direct that fire and ire towards internal problems that we have here in the United States. And also, a lot of those protesters out there that are, causing all these problems, and even some of those people that are in the government, they're being paid. And when I say paid, they're being paid to disrupt things. So Trump is in the process right now of, running through the entire federal government. And everybody's looking at their roles. They're doing a purge. There's a lot of people up here that work for the government that are upset because they've lost their jobs. And I don't want anybody to lose their jobs. But your job is not to make policies that will be detrimental to the United States. And a lot of people don't seem to understand, if I may, for example, the president makes a directive, an executive order, and he sends that executive order down to, let's say, US Cybercom. And if that 4-star general doesn't execute that executive order in the spirit that the president wants, literally he's slow rolling the president's orders. And the government is huge. You got hundreds of thousands of people and even more functions. And Obama hired more civil servants than any other president.
He did.
And a lot of those people came in at lower levels, and now they're GS 14s and 15s. And that administrative power can negate the power of a president in some cases because the president can't watch everything. Now, I tell you this because I spent, I don't know, 15 years as a civil servant. Had it not been for COVID, I'd probably still be there, you know? But the issue of the day is we got a lot of things that we got to fix. And I'm just happy that the president is understanding of those things. And I know I'm kind of rambling right now, but it makes
No,
me
you're
angry
not. I
because
mean,
I
it's
saw it up. I
that.
saw it up close. I
Yeah.
experienced it. And in a lot of cases, like for instance, Operation Warp Speed, I was part of that. I was Northcom's rep at NSA, or Cybercom. They're the same thing,
I
basically.
forgive you. I forgive you.
Thank you. I need forgiving. You do things when you sign up. First people need to understand when you go into the military, you're signing your rights away. You're raising your right hand and saying, I will carry out the orders of the president and the officers appointed over me. And sometimes you have to do things that you may not understand. And, when we were initially hit with COVID, nobody knew what to do. And Trump did the greatest things he could do. But the issue of the day is people have to execute. And I was one of those people helping to execute that. And I'll give you another example. This is Biden. You're familiar with monoclonal antibodies.
Yes.
Monoclonal antibodies were the only thing that was working against COVID for a long time. And 2021,
Well, besides
Pfizer.
ivermectin that they turned into
Oh yeah,
horse
I
paste.
forgot ivermectin.
Okay, I
and
just
they
wanted to
didn't want
go.
to-
Yeah,
and I was going to bring that up. But what people don't understand, and this isn't classified, but it's kind of hush hush. When COVID first hit, 200 of the 435 members of Congress came down with COVID. And they gave them monoclonal antibodies. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't press ivermectin, which could have solved the whole problem, but they gave them monoclonal antibodies and it solved the problem. So here it is, 2021. Pfizer's profits are starting to slow down a little bit. Now, this is me speculating, but I was right in the middle of this. Joe Biden canceled the ability for us to distribute monoclonal antibodies, which was only one of the two things, along with ivermectin, that worked against COVID.
Yeah, I'm
So
going to tell you right now, it's criminal what these guys have done. Criminal.
they need to be publicly executed. Yeah, yeah.
Bernie said it. Bernie,
I did.
Bernie said it.
I mean it.
I see
Publicly
Kyle in the back
executed.
room doing this fist pumping. Bernie, I want to have you back on again, and I want to get a little bit deeper. He's holding up his. Hold on to that, Kyle. I want to have you back on. I want to work a couple problems collectively together.
Anytime. I'm having fun, and the truth is, I got a lot of pent up aggression, and I do have PTSD. So I need to get this out. So you're doing me a great favor.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to have you on again. I need you to run for office, and I need you really quickly to tell people how they can follow you. And obviously, you got a new fan in me, and I look forward to getting together with you and breaking bread outside of the podcast, because I think that we walk the same path, and I just appreciate you coming on.
Kindred souls. Well, first, I want to thank Tommy Kerrigan, who is our mutual friend that linked us up. If you want to get a hold of me, BerneyFlowers.com, or just type in Berney, Berney, Flowers on Facebook, X, mostly your social media. I try to put out a podcast, once a week. It's less of a podcast and more of a rant, so I try to keep it short, about 5 minutes, and whatever's going on in the world, I give my take on it. And I'm thinking hard about running for Congress. I've done it before, but I'm going to tell you, I've got enemies in the 3-letter world, and there are a
You
lot
have
of people.
enemies. I've got enemies.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of folks that probably would not want to see me with congressional power, you know. But anyway, I was in the business for 34 years, between military and civilian. So, and I saw a lot. And like I said, that when they were trying to force me to take that COVID thing, that was when we parted ways. But
Yeah.
Joe, anytime you need me, give me a holler. You got my comms, and I'll be available for you.
All right, appreciate you, Bernie. God bless you. I just
brother.
followed you. I just followed you on X and on Facebook. So God bless you.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll be joined by